Thank you.
So much for frivolity, huh? Whatever, but just take a deep breath, please. And come back into this moment for us. My husband, Pete, and I are going to sing a song, or maybe one song together, and then he's going to do one for you on his own song. I stand for love, I stand for peace, I stand for joy and for release, for what is beautiful and true. I stand for hope, I stand for you.
I stand for love, I stand for peace, I stand for joy and for release, for what is beautiful and true. I stand for hope, I stand for you.
You know our world is in great pain. She needs our loving care again. Yet there are those who fail to see what we have done and what we need.
There is a cost for every act, and now there's no turning back. We burn a bridge, we bang a drum. Time to rise, the time has come.
To stand for love,
to stand for peace, to stand for joy and for release, for what is beautiful and true. To stand for hope, to stand for you. If you're thinking it's not urgent, that we've got more time to kill,
if I'm not
the one who changed things, then for heaven's sake, who will?
So I will climb, and I will climb that mountain one step at a time. I won't be swayed, I will not stop until we've made it to the top,
where we will stand for love and peace. We'll stand for joy and for release, for what is beautiful and true. We'll stand for hope, we'll stand for you, for what is beautiful and true. We'll stand for hope, we'll stand for you.
We really like that song. It was written by David Roth. Not David Lee Roth. That's what that's
The husband and wife team of Pamela and Pete. For Pete's sake. And Pamela's CDs and Pete's CDs are available, and Pamela's book, I believe, too, of For Pete's Sake. Nice story about their life together, and it's really remarkable. They have quite the story, and feel free to break time to talk to them. A wonderful, wonderful couple, and thanks for your music today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing today. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to look over the Level 1 course that we're offering on October 20th. If you're inspired to have an edge of exploring world service and Level 1 of training within the Coptic Fellowship. More details, again, in the flyers. If you haven't received them, they should be in the bookstore area, too. But this is the formal class of world service. A more detailed description other than the other brochure that you have that was handed out to you. Coptic Fellowship has a Sunday evening experience every Sunday night at 6 p.m. and your chance to explore the self-mastery and light and love. We have a new moon meditation and healing service on the Sunday closest to the new moon, and that particular Sunday is tomorrow. So feel free to join us for that. It's facilitated by Coptic Minister Laura Joy and a couple others within the organization. October 14th, we have Say It Like You Mean It, the title of the presentation, Use the Power of Your Words to Change Your Life. That's by Coptic teacher Amy Siekman. And we also have other great events. We have a message circle for weeknight activities, a couple different Tuesdays of the month. Next one coming up is October 16th. with Minister Maggie Nicholson, and that's at 7 p.m. here at the center. We'll sprinkle in other activities that we have throughout the weeknights and the weekends also here at the center as we continue on today. So thank you for being here today. It's wonderful to share a little bit of our expression to you and you to us. I do appreciate it. Coming up next, we have a Coptic teacher that's going to present. Her name is Nicole, and it's wonderful to have her back here. Our next presenter is Nicole Fix. That's her name. Her and her husband, Dave, sitting in the second row today. And she has a background in counseling individuals and families. She writes a column for Star Nations magazine and is a Coptic teacher. Sits on the advisory circle of the Gathering Thunder Foundation, based out of Lowell. And Nicole has a philosophy centered around transforming personal and collective darkness through the power of love. Very nice. Please give a warm welcome to Nicole Fix as she presents Rebirthing the Feminine, as we are in a feminine millennium. Nicole.
Thank you, Michael. That was a nice introduction, and my philosophy is a lot of what I'm talking about today. Thank you all for having me here. It's really an honor to be here. And it's an honor to be speaking on this subject matter for me. So I first spoke at the Coptic Center back in September of 2008. Oh, no, 2010, so 8 years ago. And I have come so far in my journey over the last 8 years, both personally, individually, but also professionally. I'm a different woman than I was then. So today, I'm standing here with a lot of transformation from within. Speaking on that subject matter really set into motion for me a series of events that would evolve me in ways that I never possibly would have imagined. I've gained a better understanding of myself and the feminine aspect of God. So I'm a lot more grounded in concepts of compassion now in a way that I didn't really have the capacity for before. So I just like the connection because I feel like I'm coming through this personal transformation, and to be here 8 years later pretty much and speaking on a similar subject is cool for me. So in 2010, my journey working with the feminine was just beginning. I was working a career that was really unfulfilling for me. It was a great job and I made great money, but it wasn't centered in my heart. So I went back to school. I made that decision, the end of 2010, actually. So, but I wanted a career that was full of purpose and meaning, and something that was in alignment with my heart's and my soul's gifts. So back to school I went. I obtained my master's in social work. It was a grueling 3 years, 10 months of learning, but it was so worth it. And I'm now through that, and there was a lot of sacrifice that went on with David and I and our family, and to do that. And we now have a 3.5-year-old little girl who is named Sophia, and she is just a joy. And talk about some of the new earth energy of a female. She's confident, she is independent, she's assertive, and she will let you know when things are not so pleasant. So she's a future leader, and Dave and I talk about how we're raising a future female leader and what a gift that is for us. So for me to really undergo what I needed to undergo, I had to expand my own soul. And I think we all have done that, right? As light workers, we're attracted to, the Coptic centers of the world because of our sensitivity. And, a lot of times we feel other people's pain, and we've all gone through our own times of suffering and times of pain. And that's, really what brings us, I think, into it, is we want to help alleviate another person's pain. We want to understand it. We are empathetic. We're empathic. So, yeah, we want to ease the suffering of another, and that's what compassion really is. It's one of the biggest tenets that I use in my clinical work that I do as a therapist. I do both outpatient therapy, and then I do a lot of crisis stabilization work too, which I love. And I help to guide others as they gain empathy for themselves and their own suffering, as well as understanding the suffering of others. So being really mindful of both the joy in our life, but also the pain in our life, because we all go through it. And we're in a world full of it. So speaking on the subject matter of the divine feminine certainly opened up in me a vortex of my own feminine awakening that I couldn't possibly imagine. So into that personal and professional journey I've gone. So when I spoke in 2010, what I really focused on was this shift, this feminine awakening, right? So we know that we've been living in this patriarchal society for thousands of years. Prior to that, we're more matriarchal natured. Our Earth is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. And what I see is this new shift into the new paradigm of, the feminine rising. And but it's different. It's different than it's been in years past. So that focus is on, the earth ascending, but also on us going through a rebirthing process. We are rebirthing the feminine, what she looks like in each of us, masculine or feminine, man or female. So as most of you know, 2018 is it's the year of the feminine. Numerologically, it's a 2-year, which represents the feminine. It's a new part of a new cycle, and we see the feminine rising as this feminine voice gets recaptured and brought to the surface. That's been somewhat very passive and oppressed, I think, for a long time. So women have only been able to vote for less than 100 years, right? So lots shifted in the last 100 years, but it seems to be going at a much more rapid pace. We're seeing the voice of the woman. I mean, look at the Me Too movement and the political climate this past week, and just in general, the rise of racism and, families being separated and Native American rights. So things that have been kind of lying dormant or been very hush-hush are coming to the surface. And, that happens for us to heal what needs to be healed. And that's not just on that collective level, but in each one of us individually. So what happens within us, we know happens without. So as within, so without, right? And, it's really the balance between the masculine and the feminine, balanced together, forming this yin and yang of genuine compassion. So again, finding compassion for our own suffering and the suffering of others, but doing it in, there's this masculine side of it, which is the ferocious mama bear, don't you separate these kids from their families mentality of going, to protests and advocating and standing up and using our voice for equality, but also this tender, loving, nurturing energy that can comfort one when we are in the throes of suffering. So as we transition into this new paradigm, the world as we know it is ascending, right? The fifth dimensional living and going through this time of chaos to get there, where the very values of our society, the very values that we even personally hold dear are changing. So as we move into this more heart-centered, heart-focused place, it's really based more on these feminine concepts of intuition, love, compassion, nurturance, as well as living in alignment with one's own purposes and values, what provides meaning in one's life. People aren't going to be working and doing things that they might not want to do, where years past they have. So, seeing that a lot with the younger generation, I personally have experienced that by dramatically changing careers and doing something that falls in alignment with more of who I am. So, I want to talk a little bit about the intuition piece and just the power of our own emotions, which are becoming more central to our state of being. One of the things that I do as a therapist is teach people about the beauty and transformational power of emotions. I just wrote an article on that, just the benefit of this emotional intelligence, and that emotions really serve to guide our intuition, help us make decisions. And we've for a long time negated, dismissed the importance of these, like what are labeled the negative emotions, which really aren't negative. They're painful, sure, and who wants to experience pain, but they're there, and they're there to be expressed in a healthy way. So as we move into this more heart-centered living, that's one thing that I focus on, and I know is part of the divine feminine presence. So, and again, those positive feel-good emotions like joy and love, and those more difficult ones like guilt and shame, and the ones that bring about like a tremendous amount of pain. But, and being in a place where we're not fearful of those emotions, that we're embrace them and we use them, again, in a healthy way, to direct our lives and to not fear suffering because it happens. So, what I didn't know in 2010 was that my channeling of this divine feminine energy would lead me on that deeper journey. And that's, I think, one of the many powers and the magic and the dismay of the feminine journey. So for each of us to get where we want to go, to get to this new paradigm, to get to this fifth dimensional living based on different concepts and values, we've got to let go of anything that's in our way to get there. And that can be extremely trying. It's like the story of the butterfly, right? Like the butterfly, to go through transformation, has to, to become a butterfly, the caterpillar to become a butterfly goes through the painful time in the cocoon, and where it's struggling as a chrysalis to become a butterfly. And we know that if we do anything to that chrysalis when the caterpillar is trying to come out, if we were to cut it open and help it in its struggle, that butterfly would not live. So I like to envision that at times when we go through periods of difficulty. And I think we're witnessing that in the world. I see it time and time again in what we all are going through as individuals, and, just in my own getting older process and becoming more of a mother than a maiden, and just what I learn as I am getting older and what I have so much yet to learn. So we all have a story as light workers, something that calls us into action. As I mentioned, we're all deeply sensitive, and we've got a lot of events in our life they've shaped us and made us who we are. But they've also contributed to this desire to alleviate suffering, right? And then again, the collective unrest of those around us. So just honoring and acknowledging that, like our own kind of, I guess, mission as light workers, as sensitives, as human beings on this earth. For a variety of reasons, we all deal with pain differently. One of the things I talk about with my clients is that, as humans, we have this natural tendency to avoid pain, to run away from it, to dismiss it, to try to escape it. That can be done in a numerous amount of ways. I call it experiential avoidance. But as we avoid the experience, we're avoiding some of the pieces of ourselves that make us human, that make us who we are, and that really give us a depth that we may not get otherwise. As light workers, we all have such a role that we're playing in this shifting paradigm. We're here to bringing in and holding the light, right? And we know that, we feel it. I can feel the vibrational shifts, but as we're doing it, we're clearing out these chakras and the lower chakras, and that's where some of the darker, more earthy elements live, the shadowy, dark stuff lives. And so at times we're not only bringing in the light, we're holding the light, but we are also converting darkness and holding the light through that. And that can be downright painful, personally, collectively, as sensitive. So just wanting to honor that. It's not an easy role. So with the natural tendency we all have to relieve, we all want to make people feel better. We don't want to see people suffer. We don't want to suffer. It's hard, but in doing that, we can also have a natural tendency to really avoid the depth, the meaning that painful experiences can give us. So I guess wanting to change the perspective of like not only just the negative emotions, but like the difficult emotions and these challenging times that we can embrace rather than trying to just transcend, because we are human beings. We're here on the earth, and we want to and the earth is a shadowy, dark place at times. So I think that it's important as we embrace this feminine aspect, this change that's happening in the feminine, to really look to what's known as the dark feminine, the Black Madonna, the power of death and rebirth, darkness and light. Isis shows us that in the, power of destruction with the sun god Ra, right? But that she uses her magic to steal some of his powers. But then also the destruction, that she transforms into creation through putting together, her husband who was killed and having a child together. Am I doing it justice a little bit? I don't know a lot, but that's a little bit. But, and I think the concept of the Black Madonna, have all of you heard of the Black Madonna? So wanting to talk about, it's the dark feminine. So there is a concept changing with what the feminine looks like. It's not all rainbows and butterflies and sunshine all of the time. It's also feeling these shadowy, earthy, dark pieces of ourselves and looking at those and at our collective as a way of, I want to transform you to light. I want to transform you to love. And to do that, I really need to look in the mirror with myself, with this world, and say, what can I do to contribute to that love? And one of my biggest pieces in the work that I do is, I'm not perfect, and I've gone through suffering, and I have things from my childhood that bring up guilt and shame, and I'm not going to avoid it. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to try to run it or escape it. I'm going to allow it to be healed. And by allowing it rather than experientially avoiding it, it's this mindful piece of transformation into the power of the love that we want. I saw Moana a few weeks ago for the first time. Has anyone seen that? Amazing. So the end of it was so powerful to me, but I would encourage all of you to see it. But I don't want to give it away, but the power of, it's really what I'm talking about, through the power of love, we transform darkness by healing it rather than avoiding it, transcending it, such. So I experienced this when I had my daughter, Sophia. I often talk about the most difficult piece of birthing Sophia was birthing me as a mother. And I think for women, as they become mothers, we're taught in society that it's all about rainbows and butterflies and sunshine and joy, and it is, and it's wonderful. But for some of us, especially those of us who've had difficult childhoods and not a great relationship with our mother, it brings up stuff. And it brings up stuff that needs to be healed. And for me, it did that. And I wanted to transform it and walk my talk. And I leaned in. And it was a beautiful transformation, but also a painful one. And as a woman, in that moment, I was switching careers. I was, going into a whole new journey. I was walking into the dark night of the soul, which I don't know if you all know the dark night of the soul, but it's St. John of the Cross, when no amount of light, no amount of comfort, no amount of support is going to get you through it except finding your own light. And I, in that moment, wanted to embrace my inner light and realize that the only way I could get lit up was through my own power. And I think that's a lot of what the concepts, these Egyptian mysteries teach us, is that we have within us this Christ light. We are the I am presence. And some of these depth work, like the difficult, painful stuff that is awful, the dark nights of the soul, those, if we let them and we do it safely, oftentimes needing professional support, it's a tough journey, but we can avoid those dark nights. And from within, using within, me personally, I was tested in my faith more than I've ever been tested. So, but out of that came transformation, out of that came light, out of that came beauty, because I wanted to lean in, and I didn't want to escape it, I didn't want to dismiss it, and I knew I couldn't. So that for me is the journey of the feminine, forcing us as we become more introspective, more compassionate, and more real in who we are, as we reach these depths of this humanness. But also, Carl Jung talks about the deeper the roots we can have to earth, the higher we can ascend to heaven. And we've got to have our feet so grounded in the earth, but our heads high in the heaven. And that's what we do. We bring in the light, but we've got to be rooted too. And to go through these dark nights, to really experience the suffering in our own worlds, it grounds us in a way that nothing else can. So looking at pain as more of a grounding way of finding meaning and finding purpose. I work with people who are, dealing with what I have had, where you are, maybe working in a career that's not meaningful. Feeling these difficult feelings can bring up that. They can help us guide us in a way of, maybe you're not going to change careers, but goodness, maybe some more hobbies, some things that provide joy to balance it out. So just looking at the power of our own intuition, the power of our own emotions, the power of the suffering that happens to reshape and help us find what our purpose is, find what the meaning is. So Michael Bernard Beckwith, does anyone know him? He's the leader of the Agape Center. He talks about the dark night a lot. And he talks about, what value would you need if you're going to be stuck in that place? What value would you need to live in it forever? And maybe it's acceptance, it's surrender, allowing, whatever it is, that's what gets you through it. So what I see is, as we transition to this new paradigm, there's stuff coming up for everyone, because we've got to get rid of anything that's in the way. So as that stuff comes up, rather than dismissing it and avoiding it, allowing it to come up in a safe surrender through, whatever supports you have, through the meditation, through the journaling, through, your prayer and your the support of the Coptic Center, whatever that may be for you. But giving space for it and honoring it, because it's the letting go that's getting us to this shift, this new paradigm that we want. So, there is, as we reflect on discomfort, it's finding meaning in it. So how that happens for each of us is different. But, I know that each one of you here has done that through the pain that you've walked, and it's gotten you to where you are now and where you're sitting now. And what I've realized the most is that, and I got this so much as I prepared for this, because, the world was created out of this darkness, the womb. It's the womb of the mother. And out of that womb is the spark of the divine that creates new life, the thought that creates new life in an empty vessel. And so we've got to empty out our own womb symbolically to make room for our rebirth. And that's the exact rebirth that's coming through the mother right now. And in the shift to this feminine aspect is we've got to empty it out individually, collectively. But the meaning that comes from it is getting to this place where we can channel the new earth, the new dimension, the fifth dimensional living based on love and compassion and caretaking and nurturing and acceptance. So just realizing for me that the death is in the rebirth. So for us to have this rebirth, there is a death that comes with it. But again, it's the emptying of the vessel to create the void for nature to abhor the vacuum. So that's the paradox. And people that lived through the Holocaust, people that have lived through, difficult times, that's what they talk about is this paradox between the acceptance of the death, that the same God that creates the destruction and the pain in this world also creates the light and the love. And so we focus on the light and the love even through that dark night of the soul, but it's an intentional act and we have to find our way through it. And so wanting to support one another and this world as we do that, and acceptance of that paradox. At the very core of the earth, in the ocean, there lives where life should not possibly grow. In the deepest, darkest places, there is life that grows there, and it's new and it's interesting, and but in that place, these like hypothermal vents, I can't really explain it, but new life grows. So just looking at the symbolic nature of the woman and the shift that's happening. So allowing space for this gift of creation in the void of what has been destructed. So through our pain, through our suffering, we create this necessary rebirth. And, as we shift our consciousness, wanting to just embrace this rebirth and remembering that even through the difficulties, even through, out of the womb comes the baby. We know that baby's going to be born. Out of the darkest night, we know dawn is coming. Out of winter, when it's long and cold and like 6 months forever in Michigan, we know spring's going to be here. So just, I think, using that as a mentality as well. So just embracing this place of death and rebirth and knowing that the death is in the rebirth. So may we all serve to light up the darkness, to shift the paradigm with our intentions, with our thoughts, with our compassionate, gentle, loving hold on this darkness, and may we then transform it through the power of our own creation within. Thank you.
Wonderful, Nicole. What a beautiful expression of femininity in these changing times, and gave us things to think about in our own paths, our own daily expressions. So we're so grateful. Thank you. Moving through the morning already on our Egyptian experience, and the mysteries continue into the afternoon. But first, we'll have a break for lunch coming up. We do have the psychic sampler in about 10 minutes. Please keep in mind we have service providers still. Numerology readings available for you, shaman energy sessions, emotional clearing sessions, energy touch healing sessions, seventh dimensional healing sessions, sessions also with Linda, Laura Joy, Benita, Steve, and John available for you. Also, the silent auction does continue. We'll probably bring out some items in this afternoon if you don't have much of a chance during the lunch hour to browse, bid, and shop. So bid often for that. Take a look at the level 1 class. Again, I need to stress that it's a transformational class of world service. As you explore your femininity and masculinity and your own expression, that might be a wonderful way to get started with that as you reevaluate your path in this life with level 1 world service. Again, the brochures in the meet and greet room for that. And we'll come back. Coming up, we have 1:40. We'll re-adjourn from lunch in the psychic sampler. And again, sign-up sheets are available for you. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we welcome you back coming up at 1:40. And let's enjoy some lunch and give somebody you love a hug, okay? Thanks.